Good morning, everyone, and happy Election Day on May 17, 2022. Wee-haw, a long-awaited day. You have until 8 p.m. tonight to turn in your ballots. Postmarks do count. That is a new law this year. Also, we at the Board of County Commissioners are encouraging people to go help process ballots and help with the blurred ballot situation of transferring the votes from one to the other. The clerk says we need to have different parties represented at one ballot and one station. So what she needs is non-affiliated voters, and she needs more Republicans. So hello, NAVs and Republicans, let's step up to the plate, help our county clerk to process these ballots so we can get them finished on time. Gary Schmidt, our county administrator, has offered up 37 county employees to help with this process, and we very much appreciate that. However, we still need equal representation of NAVs and Republicans. If you're out there and you're still hesitant to do so, maybe you should just go ahead and do that. And remember, vote like it matters, because it does. Gary, what's up next?
Thank you, Chair. We'll start with the Housing Authority of Clackamas County Board. If you would please convene as that board, Chair. Chair, I'm sorry, if you convene as the Housing Authority Board.
Oh, yes, excuse me, I was looking at my papers. I will now, thank you, Mark. I will now recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Online is Housing Commissioner Ann Leenstra, who is also joining you. These are two requests for consent agenda for the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. First is approval of a resolution authorizing a $3 million loan of regional affordable housing bond funds and an allocation of 40 project-based regional long-term rental assistance vouchers to support the Merrillhurst Commons Affordable Housing Project. The projected value of the loan and vouchers is $8,880,996. Funding is through the Metro Regional Affordable Housing Bond Funds and Supportive Housing Services Funds. No county general funds are involved. Tony Carter is the Interim Director of the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Devin Ellen is the Housing Development Director. I'm sorry, I say your title wrong every time, but you run the housing part, the development part. So go ahead, please, Tony and Devin.
Good morning, Commissioners. We are requesting approval of Resolution 1965 to authorize the $3 million loan of regional affordable housing bond funds and an allocation of 40 project-based regional long-term rent assistance, which is the SHS program, rent assistance program, funds for the Merrillhurst Commons development in Lake Oswego. The project will consist of 17 one-bedroom units, 61 two-bedroom units, and 22 three-bedroom units. 60 units overall to serve families that earn 60% area median income or below.
Yeah, I'll add that the 40 regional long-term rent assistance vouchers will support 40 units at 30% AMI and below and provide wraparound services for families experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness.
Any questions or comments for the presenters today on this? Any objections? Seeing none.
Item 2, approval of a construction contract with Normaco for the modernization of 22010 Leslie Project to bring the property up to current HUD standards. Contract not to exceed $247,000. Funding is through a HUD Capital Fund grant. No county general funds are involved.
This project is a public housing unit that has been lived in for 20 years by a large family that has successfully, all the children have grown and moved off of assistance. The elderly parents have now been moved and downsized to a smaller unit. So this unit has not had any major upgrades for over 20 years. The septic system has failed now, and we need new heaters, water heaters, new plumbing, new electrical, siding. It's a very large project to do. So the cost is $247,000 to get all the repairs done so that we can move a new family into the unit.
That's just for
Yes.
one unit? One unit?
That is for one unit.
Is this, Paul, go ahead with your line. Are you done? Is this a single-family residence?
It's a single-family scattered site.
And this is paid through HUD?
This is paid through the Capital Fund Program, HUD federal funds.
Great, okay.
That's a lot of money for one unit. I'm a little puzzled by that. You mentioned water heaters plural. That's what threw me.
That was a mistake. It's just a water heater, the furnace, the system, the roof, the siding, the windows, the new
Well, it
flooring.
sounds like it's a major, you said not 20 years had something been done. Okay. Ann, do you have any comments?
No, I really don't.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Oh, Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, my question is that on this particular project, is it in the best interest of our housing authority to remodel this, or would this be a project that would be better handled by selling it and using money elsewhere?
So the Zillow value on the unit right now with no repairs and nothing done would probably be around $350, $400 because there's so much work that has to be done immediately. And likely even to sell the unit, a lot of this work we'd have to pay for. Not many buyers are willing to buy a unit with a failed septic system and failed roof. So in all likelihood, if we do all these repairs, it goes from $350,000 to $400,000 to a $650,000 value.
Yeah.
So you are getting the money back.
But it's still an old house.
Yes.
That's my issue as well. I am, I'm not real hot on this project, but Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how in the world we have a property through the Housing Authority that gets to such disrepair, and what's our process to make sure we don't get into this kind of a situation?
So during the 2 years of COVID, we had an elderly couple with many disabilities that were in an overhoused situation and needed to be downsized, but for 2.5 years, we couldn't move them because of their disabilities and the COVID outbreak. So we just got them relocated, so the unit was available. They also were not allowing entry to the unit because they didn't want to be around people with COVID. So they weren't reporting things that needed to get done.
What is the zoning on this property? Is it residential?
It's residential.
And it's only one unit is allowed? Is it in the area of middle housing? If we were, for instance, to raise this property, could we put a multiple unit on there? That's my question. See, we're going to put in, you say 250,000 is the best estimate, but I know from personal experience, once you get into these situations, if this house is as bad as it is, Paul, Webster Road comes to mind. You get into it, and then all of a sudden, there's another 20 and another 50, and it goes on and on. Commissioners, do you mind if we table this and do a little more research on it and have them bring it back?
Good idea.
I think we need to look at other possibilities. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think we ought to explore. I know that because there was initiative suggested that we look at reducing our stock of scattered sites. And so it seems, I understand it might improve the marketability, but if there's, let's say, 150,000, I would like to know what the property will be worth after it's done. And I just want to understand the math and make sure we're making a wise investment, and make sure these people are being housed at the same time. And it's only one family, it sounds like, so I'm sure we can accommodate them somewhere or somehow.
The family is relocated already, so it's a vacant unit at this
Oh,
time.
okay, it's vacant. Thank you.
Boss.
Commissioner Fisher's up.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that for 2.5 years we couldn't go into the property, but with all of these things that are listed out here, concrete, septic, water heater, electrical upgrades, kitchens, bathrooms, plumbing, flooring, cabinets, painting. My concern is that I'm concerned about the process that we use as a housing authority to maintain our units. When I participated in the board training for housing authority board members, and I'm looking at Ann Leenstra here on my screen, she participated with me. Clackamas County got a very good rating for the maintenance and upkeep of our housing units. And this is a dissonance for me. I don't understand this, how something can be in such disrepair. So that's my first question. My second question is, it says up to $247,000. So it may not be $247,000. I think for this board to have more of an realistic expectation, what is the anticipated cost? Or what are you just asking for simplicity so you don't have to come back to us again? So I don't know how I get those questions answered.
So we're going to table this, and you can come back at a later date, talk to Gary when you have your information together. I'm not saying we're totally opposed to this, but I really want to look at the zoning and what all possibilities are in this property. And again, how old is this house?
I don't know.
Yeah, bring that information too. Yeah, so thank you on that.
All right, so we're going to pull this from the consent agenda. When you're ready, you let me know, and we'll probably come back to issues to have a longer discussion with the board.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We're back to the next request, consent agenda, item 3, approval of an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with Metro for the Affordable Housing Bond Program, adding cooling unit requirements and funding for bond-funded affordable housing projects. The amendment value is $1,666,000 for a new total agreement value of $115,154,094. Funding is through Regional Metro Housing Bond proceeds. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, so essentially, this is just an addition to our total bond allocation to support air conditioning in bond-funded units. And since all of our current projects, approved projects, already have air conditioning, it's just going to be going into our overall allocation to support future projects that need air conditioning or other resiliency features.
Any comments or questions? Any objections? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you. So we will bring items 1 and 3 to your consent agenda this Thursday. Item 2 we'll pull until further research. Okay,
Any
thank you.
comments from Ann Leenstra?
No, I'm satisfied, thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Chair, would you next convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Board?
I will recess as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners, or excuse me, as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
Thank you. So this item is an ordinance delegation to establish fees. Commissioners, when you met to discuss NCPRD fees about a month ago, I had recommended to you that you may want to repeal an ordinance that is now 10 years old that delegated NCPRD fee structures entirely to the district administrator or the district director, not the board of directors. I respectfully disagree with that. I think the board should always make, fee or fine decisions, and you agreed at that time, so now we're bringing this back to you. If you still agree, this would be the ordinance change. Sorry I just gave your opening there, but Stephen Madcore, County Counsel, Mike Bork, Director of NCPRD, are here to give any further clarity. Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. Nothing further unless you have questions. What we have, though, is a draft ordinance which does vest authority with the district board itself, which would be you. And you could also, by written order, delegate it to somebody else. And that might present itself in a situation where there were a park user who was maybe unable to make particular payments to participate in programs based on a hardship factor. Instead of this board hearing it, you could delegate that type of decision-making authority to either the NCPRD director and or the district administrator. That's at your discretion as well, though that can only be made with a written delegation. But as we have drafted here, it would be an ordinance change, which would be just like any other ordinance change, public hearing, 2 readings and things along those lines, but it would remove discretion from the director and the district administrator and vest it entirely within the district board itself.
Okay.
Yep.
Commissioner Savas.
I remember this when it came to us, and so the rationale, which I agreed with then, and I kind of thinking, you know, you need to change my mind to make a change here. The reasoning I heard was because the programs can vary, you know, it could be a new program, it could be a program that might only be seasonal, it could change, the dynamics could change, that it probably wasn't worth the administrative efforts of the Board of Commissioners to be involved in such small little things that really don't collect much revenue. I agreed with that then, and I still am thinking that's the smart thing to do here. We're not imposing any permanent fees that, in a sense, when I say permanent, that are, you know, it's not like the county parks where we do camping and RVs, things and so forth like that. This is something that's more, what is typically in line with the programming. If, for example, you know, the aquatic center is charging a fee for, this was actually raised in the meeting, actually, if you go, My memory's scary. And that was, if the price of a candy bar changes or the price of a piece of pizza changes, do you really want that to go to the Board of County Commissioners? And so I am compelled to leave it as is. I don't mind maybe a greater reporting back to us when those fees are changed, but I don't think we should be spending a lot of time trying to dictate the fees for the concessions and all the other different things that are just market-driven.
Paul, when you said leave things as is, we have changes on here. What are you wanting to do?
Leave the ordinance as is, don't change it, or the resolution as is, and don't change it.
It says district administrator and district director.
Yep,
You want to leave it as is.
that's my friendly suggestion.
Okay, which would be contrary to what has been presented to us here now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Am I understanding this right? Because I'm trying to understand. Okay, Gary, you have a line.
Yes, so I'm I'm recommending this change. This is the only district or department where you do not set fees or fines. It's the only one. Everyone else, it comes to you. You still have the authority to delegate it, and you can make that distinction if it's minor things like candy bars or whatever, that you just delegate that automatically. I just respectfully suggest that's the board. I don't want to make this call. I want you to make the call on any fee or fines. You're meeting 3 times a week now, commissioners, so we certainly can bring this to you at a week's notice. So I'm just recommending we be consistent across the organization with the board of directors, the commissioners, approve any fee or fines of any kind on
Okay.
behalf of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, despite the trust and confidence that the board has in the Director of NCPRD and in our county administrator, I think this change is a good one. It just gives us another look-see on any changes on fees. So I support the change to the county ordinance.
Commissioner Savas?
So let's just say, I just want to know how it works, so I'm all open to different ideas. So let's just say that a price of a piece of pizza changes from $1.50 to $1.75, let's just say. How much what efforts, mechanics do we have to go through to make that change? Is it done by resolution? Is it done by ordinance? How painful is that going to be?
Currently, you would have to do it annually by ordinance when you do your fines and fees. If you were to have it revert to district board authority, what you could do to allow for more nimble costing on items such as pizza and candy bars, you could have a written delegation to the district administrator for full cost recovery of those fungible types of items. All programs and parks and services, otherwise, cost setting is still reserved at the board level.
Can we put some kind of can you come back to us maybe? I'm going to make this friendly suggestion. Come back to us with some kind of a dollar amount that it does come to us, and a dollar amount where maybe it's below that threshold and does not come to us, because I don't want to get into that kind of detail and wait a whole year. We could potentially lose. The market's going this way, right? So we're probably at more loss by not being nimble and being able to adjust the fees. So in the best interest of the district, I'm just wondering if that's the smartest way to go.
I have a question. Somebody said something about full cost recovery. We cannot charge enough users' fees to cost recovery on our parks. So if you're talking full cost recovery, I'm assuming it would be things like food and the cost of, I don't know what, a life jacket? Well, that's more county parks, but, so I would have to know the difference. I am not wanting to micromanage every single little fee like Commissioner Savas says. So if we can have some type of a middle ground on this, Mike Bork?
Thank you, Chair. I believe the middle ground would be having something in writing. We don't have a concession stand, so the piece of pizza is not a great example. What is a better example is sometime mid-fiscal year, a new program, staff wants to create a new program, and we need to set a fee for that. And so there should be a mechanism in place that, again, you're the ultimate authority on setting that, but that we could create new programs and come to you either annually or quarterly to let you know if there have been any new fee increases and or fee additions. We wouldn't change fees mid-year, but if there's any new programs, we could report that to you. And our costing, our fee determination is going to be based on, depending on what the program is. Some of them are more subsidized, some of them are less, depending on what the program is. So that to me would be the middle ground. I don't like having the authority, and I agree with the county administrator.
You don't like the authority. You
Well,
wanna- okay.
really, fee setting should be the function of the legislative body, with some flexibility for us to be nimble.
Right. Okay, I do kind of like that idea. It's more middle ground. Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, so essentially, all we're doing is moving this into an already existing process that we use for other bodies that we set fees for.
Yes.
So I don't really have a problem with that, because there's the option to delegate if it's going to move us, am I correct, Gary, into micromanaging?
Always choose to delegate any portion of this, and for any of other fees as well, for other
As long as
departments.
that option's there, I'm okay with it.
Would there ever be a situation that you would have to implement a fee mid-season before we had the annual review? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, if there was a new program, I'll use an example. We try and follow some of the recreational program trends. And so if a messy, science program is hot, we would want to create that. And we would base our cost or our fee that we would charge for that based on number of staff, et cetera, a cost
So
recovery
basically, your
model.
program development,
Yes.
you could do. Okay, Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, Mike, I'm not sure. I suspect maybe that with the advent of COVID, that we ceased selling foods out of the aquatic center, but I specifically remember we did.
Yes, there was a concession stand. It's now vending machines. So, I mean, the example could be that our costs have gone up for vending, but that's a different that's under contract, so we really don't control those. We just get proceeds from that.
Okay.
Commissioner Fisher?
Did our district advisory council weigh in on this?
No, because we're under the existing ordinance. When we came to you a couple of weeks ago, there's not a process in place currently. We plan, if this is changed, to insert the DAC into next year's fee-setting process, but they have not yet.
Okay, but I mean, even just for this change, and if they haven't been consulted on it, why?
To be honest, because it's not really within their authority for the district advisory. They're supposed to advise on budgetary items and long-term strategies and things like this. This just had not come up.
Okay. I value our citizen members that participate in our advisory councils, and it would be informative to hear what their perspective would be, because I can see all sides of this issue, and but that would be helpful to know.
So what do we want to do? Do I hear a motion for anything?
Chair,
Yes.
I think this should go on the consent agenda for Thursday, and we should approve this.
Did you? I would
It will
agree.
not be that quick. This is an ordinance change, so.
Right. If you're good with it as drafted, what we would do is schedule a public hearing on
Okay,
this and
yeah.
move forward with it. That we're the
Okay.
District Advisory Board, we could certainly apprise them of this process in the meantime. And we'll go, and we'll have 2 readings, and
Do
if
we need
you
a
want to.
motion, Mr. Magcor?
No, just give us direction that move forward to a public hearing. That's fine.
Okay, and then we could vote more formally at the public hearing. At the public
Yes.
hearing, can we make changes?
Absolutely.
Okay, Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you learned anything from us in talking to this today, but the other part about this, that as I read the packet last night on this item, a lot of what we do, in a parks district typically, there's either no cost, zero cost, and cost recovery is something that's not realistic in a lot of cases, other than hard fixed items that we need to recover our costs for. So if whatever material you put together for all that could be more clear, that would be helpful, I think, or have some kind of a dollar limit or what it might be. But I would just like more clarity, because I was scratching my head when I read it.
Yeah, me too. Do you have marching orders, I guess? Do you have instructions?
We'll schedule a public hearing and go from there.
Thank you very
Good,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
I shall now
Please now reconvene
recess.
as the board. Yep.
Recess as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you. Next is the regular consent agenda for the county. We'll start with Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval to apply for a rural surface transportation grant to replace the existing bridge across the Bull Run River on Bull Run Road. Grant value is $11,509,700, with matching funds of $2,867,425 funded through the County Road Fund and $10,000 funded through Warehouser. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson is the Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Commissioners. This is your favorite bridge, Bull Run Bridge. Has a classification rating of 2 out of 100. This board has already authorized our department to secure funding through another grant, and this is an additional grant opportunity that came forward. Same parameters as the bill grant that you already authorized us to apply for, just essentially a separate funding source. So we are here today to ask the board's authorization to advance with this grant request.
Dan, did I hear right, 2 million our county road fund is the match on this?
Correct.
Okay, so what does that do to our county road fund? Or is this something that normally our county road fund would pay for?
Whenever there is a grant request or a matching request, we program that into our forecast for our various maintenance needs and capital needs the county sees.
Yes,
There are
okay.
sufficient funds available to fund this.
There are sufficient funds, okay. Any other comments from commissioners on this? And we have a draft letter before us, commissioners. I guess I would need an approval on that to go forward.
Well, you would do that Thursday at the business meeting.
So this goes to the consent agenda?
Yep.
Yep.
Are there any objections to this letter? I guess I should ask that.
Objection.
Okay, Dan, there you go.
Thank you so much.
Item 2, approval to apply for a Metro funding opportunity to fund abandoned RV disposal, bulky waste removal at affordable housing communities, and temporary supplemental waste removal at up to 5 encampment locations. Total value is $378,000. Funding is through Metro. No county general funds are involved.
On May 10th, you heard a presentation from Scott Seco, Assistant County Counsel, and Brad O'Neill from Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. That discussion was mostly focused on RVs that are derelict throughout the county. As a part of those materials, there was a reference to possible funding coming forward from sources, be it Metro, to fund garbage removal, bulky waste removal to some extent. What you see before you, and as you'll see in the staff report, it mentions the word recently Metro announced. This has been very recent, and we have to have these proposals in as soon as reasonably possible. Sustainability staff, primarily Evan Polk and Rick Winterhalter, have looked at developing recommendations, and you see 3 recommendations requested here, one of which is almost seed money for abandoned RV cleanup along county roads. Secondly, you see a discussion around bulky waste material at multifamily low-income facilities. And last but not least, targeted temporary garbage pickups at homeless encampments. And we are working hand in hand with our partners in H3S as we develop these programs, because they have the expertise and the connections to those individuals that are out in the community. We have the relationship with the haulers to provide the service. This is the concepts that we're putting forward now. We're just asking, the request is to advance those concepts with Metro. Should they approve these, we'll have to come back and formalize with those with the Board of County Commissioners through intergovernmental agreements, as we usually do when there's transfer of money. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I think the concepts that you have brought before us is concerns that we're hearing from the public. You know, clean up this garbage along the side of the road, clean up these homeless encampments, and can we just take care of that? Because it is just, I know all of us have been hearing from constituents on this particular item. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I agree with this, what you're bringing forth with us as well. But what struck me last night when I read this was, it's great. I mean, but if all 3 counties were to do it, let's just say, and Metro was to fund it, because we're all part of Metro, that would help, I think, the concern that Clackamas County may be the dumping ground for RVs. And it wouldn't matter. If it was in Multnomah County, they would have access to the same resources to remove a vehicle. But I don't want us to see or handle all of that, because there's a concern about that happening.
Yeah.
So is there a way we can actually communicate with Metro and our regional partners to see if there's a way to get this funding expanded beyond Clackamas County to Multnomah and Washington County?
So I can't respond specifically to your question, because Multnomah County will be able to apply for similar funds. I'm not sure what they're applying for, so we can reach out to them and have a broader discussion. I also am aware of the fact that Metro is bringing other resources to that discussion in regards to trash removal, which I think we should probably prepare a packet for the board and update them on the totality of all those. But we can at least reach out to our partners that are out there, other regional partners, and see what they're bringing forward in regards to proposals. This is simply just targeted towards the comments and questions we've been hearing from the board, from our citizens, to build on the RV discussion you had previously. Again, these are one-time monies. And so this is kind of that seed discussion to some extent that came from the state, and they're being funneled through Metro. I don't think this is the last time we're going to be talking about this. There's probably going to be additional discussions, and what I've heard from you is a focus on regional solutions rather than targeted individual county solutions, and we can advance those discussions.
Yeah, I might encourage maybe Commissioner Scholl at MPAC to raise this, because that's really one of the regional tables that can be discussed, and possibly when our next opportunity with District 8 to talk about it regionally as well. This is a regional problem, and I love it. I love the idea of it, but I think it ought to be expanded.
Okay. I've also noticed on Highway 213 between Beaver Creek Road and Oregon City, all the way up to Park Place, to I-205, there's that whole area that's treed, and there's been a lot of Metro activity with contractors cleaning up the homeless camps in there, and they're huge. And Metro has a park in there. And then the other day I drove by, and there were 5 brand-new shopping carts along the highway, and I don't know if those were set aside for somebody to come pick up later, but they've been working on that for a very long time.
They're back out there this morning.
Are they?
Nonstop,
Yeah.
every week.
That is quite the project along there, and it's making a difference, I think, yeah.
I also want to make sure the board understands that we're taking these funds and we're leveraging them with the other funds that were discussed at the other meeting.
Right.
So we've got funding that's coming in from Water Environment Services, from sustainability. We're working with the Dump Stoppers program at BCS.
Oh, yeah.
So we're trying to figure out, if you think about it, a lot of the ways to tackle these problems are geographically based on where those dollars can be used, and we're looking to diversify those dollars to the greatest extent possible. So
Well, good, good. It needs to be done. Our people want to see this done, and this is a start. Thank you, Dan.
thank you so much.
All right, next, Finance Department, approval of an amendment to a contract with Moss Adams for audit services, extending the duration of the contract to April 30, 2023. The amendment value is not to exceed $342,700. The total contract value is not to exceed $2,164,400. Funding is through cost allocations from other county departments, some of which may be funded by budgeted county general funds and other funding sources. Elizabeth Comfort is the Finance Director. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners, and Gary Schmidt. Last week, thank you, we wrapped up our fiscal year 2021 audit. Today, I am here to talk about the fiscal year 21-22 audit, which will begin in June, the activity. So before you is a request to extend this contract with Moss Adams to perform the audit on this current fiscal year. Due to the lateness of our last year's audit, we weren't able to get the RFP out and receive proposals. So we'd like to extend their contract one additional year with the completion by December 31st of 22. And then in January of 23, we will begin the RFP process to seek bidders for the next 5 years of audits.
Okay. Any comments from commissioners on this? Commissioner Scholl?
Are you satisfied with the performance of Moss Adams in the last audit?
I am. I'm very pleased with their support. They help us year-round. These fees are not just for the audit services. We're able to engage them with various questions on how to handle processes or new things that come up. In fact, right now, we're working on a new policy, and we've engaged them. We've reached out to them for support to make sure that we're on the right track. So they're very useful 12 months out of the year.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you. All these items will go to the consent agenda for this Thursday's business meeting. Next, draft support letter for an I-205 grant through the Oregon Department of Transportation. Chris Lyons from Public and Government Affairs, Dan Johnson, Transportation and Development, will present. There was a draft letter in your packet. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Here with a decision point on I-205, I'm Chris Lyons with BGA.
So ODOT is considering applying for a federal infra grant for Phase 2 of the 205 Improvements Project. This is the 6-mile stretch of the corridor that would add a lane in both directions between Stafford Road and Oregon Highway 43. The total estimated cost of the project is $453 million. ODOT would be applying for $120 million of that. We understand that ODOT is unlikely to submit the application to the feds without support from locals and the congressional delegation, and the delegation is looking to us to see where we're at. So as you'll see in your packet, staff are recommending your support on the application, and we've included a draft letter of support for your consideration. And for the letter, we feel that less is more in this case. It primarily focuses on the needs of the corridor, the benefits of the project, and it's in alignment with your federal agenda priority of seeking federal funds for this project, and it's also aligned with your transportation values, which are included as an attachment to this letter. The time is pretty short here. The infra application deadline to USDOT is Monday, so ODOT is seeking letters of support no later than this Friday.
This Friday.
Correct.
So Chris, where is the remainder of the $330 million approximately coming from to finish the project?
At this point, it would be revenues from tolling.
Okay, good. And, well, not good, but thank you for your question. Your answer to the question. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, we discussed this in our transportation meeting yesterday with staff. Both Dan and Chris were there and other staff. And I think I recommended, I think there was, I don't want to speak for them, but I think there was, relatively seemed to be consensus that without any harm, it might be advantageous to not confuse the issue by striking the last sentence of the first paragraph. And that sentence would be, this award will diversify the funding of a regionally supported project that was designated a high priority corridor. That's that full sentence, strike it, because there is a reference in there of tolling. So I don't want it to be contrary and interpreted that we are contrary to our value statement. So that's a friendly amendment to the letter. And that would just, again, simple, strike the last sentence of the first paragraph of the letter. Rest of it's fine.
Commissioner Fisher.
Oh, I'm going to read what Commissioner Savas said and maybe weigh in after this, but I'm in support of diversifying the funding for 205, very much so, and we've been lobbying on this for a long time, speaking directly to our delegation, talking to our partners at the federal government. When we did make trips to DC, this was prioritized. We would go and talk. We would talk about these different potential funding streams, which were not available earlier. So is there anything else that, yes, I mean, I think we'll all agree to send the letter, really important, but other opportunities for us to weigh in through lobbying or advocacy efforts for this particular grant opportunity.
I mean, you want to know if there's other funds available besides tolling to finish the project?
Well, just that we really want these federal funds for Phase 2 of 205. So just if there are any other opportunities.
Yeah, I would say a few things here. First, I know that all of our local jurisdictions are considering letters of support. It was discussed at C4 last week. In fact, Happy Valley has already submitted a letter.
Right.
As of this morning, as I understand it. Secondly, we have the JPAC trip coming up to DC here in a few weeks, so we will be back together with regional partners, with ODOT, and we can speak to the delegation and to potentially to USDOT about it. And then third, if members of the delegation take a position of support, they can also make calls to USDOT when the time is right on the application.
Okay, so you're already 10 steps ahead of my question. Thank you, Chris.
Commissioner Schull.
Yes, my concern about this letter is that it could be seen by the public as the board acquiescing to ODOT without the detailed questions we've asked the county and city levels about the finer points of how tolling is going to be administered. Okay, which is similar to what Commissioner Savas's concerns were. Okay, so if this letter goes out, will the public see it as the board acquiescing to ODOT? Because people are looking at these.
Well, I can give you an opinion on that. I don't want to put staff on the spot trying to predict what the public is going to think. Commissioner Scholl, I look at this letter as we're trying to get funding to mitigate any other tolling measures that are going to be put on us by not our choice. This is $120 million that's probably sitting on the table, and I'm not willing to ignore it. So this letter will go out. I can sign it without my commissioners as it's written. As chair, I do have that authority, but we're discussing it today. Now, Commissioner Savas has brought up to strike that sentence. I think maybe partially we should leave part of the sentence in, and I think it should read like this. This award will diversify the funding of a regionally supported project that was designated a high priority corridor, period. And I do not think if the board is not willing to, we could strike the rest of the sentence after that, if you're willing to do that. I think that is a good, because it is a priority in the region. It's a priority for, it's our priority. We can't disagree with that particular thought on that one. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, well, I just read that word diversify, in full honesty, if you say diversify, diversify it with tolling funds, that is, I think what my point was, and Commissioner Scholl's point, is that indirectly it will be perceived as we're supporting tolling, and that's why I think that it's safer, just less is more. We know it's a priority. Strike the entire sentence.
I agree.
I disagree. Commissioner Schrader?
Why don't we just say this award will support the funding of a regionally supported project that was designated a high priority? So why don't we just get rid of the word diversify?
And put support, that's
Yeah,
okay.
we'll support the
Commissioner
funding.
Fisher?
Yeah.
I mean, we could
Remove diversified funding.
qualify the sentence and just say, as reflected in the values of the Clackamas County Commission, we do not support tolling. We could put it in there. We are very much in support of diversifying the funds available. And it goes without saying that it's not just federal funds, but it's any and all diversification of funds that we
That's
can.
my point that I was trying to
Yes.
make. If we get this initial 120 million, then maybe that will give us leverage to go out and get something else on
Yes.
the region. ODOT is, I should assume, should be bringing some of their state transportation money to this project and not just rely on tolling. We have the federal funds that are coming in that I don't think have been designated anywhere. We should get some federal funds to this corridor and apply for this grant. And ODOT should put some more of their money in and not rely solely on the tolling to pay for this. So, and I'm sure that Mark and Paul have been saying that. That's nothing new.
Well, in order to move this along, I'm going to make a motion to accept the letter with the amendment that the sentence read, the second sentence in the first paragraph read, this award, what'd you say, Martha?
Support, and not
Well, yeah, we'll-
say diversify.
We'll support the funding of a regionally supported project, on and on and on, as written.
That was designated as a high-priority corridor, period?
And yeah.
Right.
And then stop it there, Paul?
Well, no, just leave the entire sentence. Well, you could. Let's just do that.
Yeah,
That's a
to
good
have a high
idea,
priority
Chair.
corridor in the 2015
Yeah,
FAST
does
Act.
that make sense?
I would just suggest, because to me, the question would be who designated it, so you might add designated by Congress
Yeah.
as a high priority corridor.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
Okay, let's do that. Does that make sense? This award will support, Paul, the funding of a regionally supported project that was designated a high-priority corridor by the United States Congress.
Good to go.
Is that okay?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second that. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because you guys are the experts here, will this be clear enough and supportive enough? And,
Yes.
okay, great.
All righty.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other comments?
Good work.
Okay, do we need to make a motion? Yes.
Already done.
We made a motion, excuse me, we need a
Second.
vote. Yeah.
It's already it's already moved and seconded. You just need a vote. Are you ready to vote?
Motion is made by Commissioner Savas, seconded by Commissioner Fisher. And Tony, please call the poll.
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, staff, for coming forward with this. Okay, Gary, what's next?
Next, there is a draft op-ed about libraries that the commissioners could choose to make. There's a draft that was in your packet, if you wish to do so. So I want to seek your guidance if you support this or not. Sue Hildick, the Director of Public and Government Affairs, along with Kimberly Dinwiddie, Public Information Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Welcome.
Thank you. So you've been making difficult decisions on community projects during this time of rising costs, and we just want to make sure we're communicating really clearly with the public. That was the underlying intention in drafting this, which we thought we might seek placement for with Pamplin if you were so inclined. Kimberly is the author, and so we wanted to see what you thought.
And what is this letter intended to do, and who is our audience?
Our audience is our community members who are hearing about the delays to these projects, and this opinion piece gives you, the commission, an opportunity to express empathy, which has been clear in your conversations here at the dais, and it'll go further than those community members who watch your meetings. And it just gives some space and a few words to let the community know that you do have their best interests in mind and understand that this is a disappointing time and disappointing news.
Okay, Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I have a question and I have a comment after that. So the question is, have you heard anything since last week when we made this call to, had that concern? I mean, it's been pretty quiet on my end, so I just that's why I actually really asking the question.
Personally, I have not heard a lot of chatter in the community about this. Sue, have you been informed of any?
It's been pretty quiet.
So this is really proactive.
Yeah, we wrote this in anticipation of hearing more, but still feel like it has value in being proactive around the difficult decisions.
Well, I don't have any, I think it's well-written. I don't have any problem with the way it's written, but I'm just wondering if we may actually be informing people that may not really that might get upset by it and really not knowing the history. So I'm kind of concerned it might have the opposite effect. And if silence is golden currently, if we're not hearing anything, I don't want to, I think potentially there might be a problem that when you need to explain it to people that don't even know the other parts of the background. So that's the piece that I'm wondering if maybe if there's no public issues that we know of right now, maybe leave well enough alone. That's my suggestion.
It's always a delicate balance, right? You all know that, yeah.
Commissioner Fisher?
I'm always an advocate of getting ahead of community concerns, and I do think this is a community concern. I think it's very well written. I love how it opens. You did a great job with really expressing the values of this collective commission. So I would be in support of it as well. I think it's great as written. I don't feel any need to wordsmith it.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, I think the letter will calm fears and it would be a positive effect. To let people know we're concerned about these libraries. We live in a time of rising costs, and that we look forward to the time when we can build them affordably and that people will get the libraries they're looking for.
Okay, do we need a motion? I'll entertain a motion for passage.
I move that we approve the letter proposed as written.
Second.
Commissioner Fisher has moved that we send this library op-ed piece, and Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Savas,
I'll support it.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much for coming forward on this.
Thank you.
Next,
Gary,
your
what's
business meeting for this Thursday, May 19th, 2022, 10 a.m. You have a consent agenda, and that is it so far. If you have any questions on any items, please let me know. Next, advisory board and commission appointments. You have several. Tony, go ahead, please.
First advisory board is the Mental Health and Addictions Council, staffed by the Behavioral Health Division. Currently has 7 openings on their commission. Through a recruitment process, 1 application was received. Recommendation for appointment is Catherine Legiel to a first term.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Schrader has moved that we appoint Catherine Legiel to the Mental Health and Addictions Council, seconded by Commissioner Fisher. Comments? My comment is this: we still have 6 openings on this council. Very important work, and I'm sure PGA will continue in their recruitment, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tony, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Chair, can I just some commentary on this one?
Yes.
This might be probably as good a time as any. I have come to learn that the fire district, Clackamas County Fire District, is really doing actually assigned a person, perhaps full-time, if I'm not misunderstanding this, who's going to be trying to manage their homeless operations and their need. I had a conversation, quite the conversation, and their need to now address that as an issue. And I don't think that's what people expected public safety to be involved with, our firefighters, our paramedics, you know, at the accelerated rate that it is today. I mean, it's always been out there. They're going to respond to people. I love the work that they do. Great people. Their heart's in the right place. But, you know, when I hear the sheriff's office doing the same thing, I hear police agencies with the same issue, it seems to me that, and I've heard from people that have been concerned that the county is not doing enough, government's not doing enough on mental health. And I know that there's some people are somewhat distraught that have been involved with behavioral health, mental health challenges, and feels that we're really not doing, or the state. I'm not going to blame it all on the county. I mean, this is a regional problem as well as a state problem. I just want to express those concerns that I've heard from folks and air that we're just not doing enough, and the public knows it.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've talked about this a lot, Commissioner Savas, and you're right, and maybe that's part of our legislative agenda going forward for next year, that we hit that really hard, and we can sit down with staff and go over that. Okay. What's up next?
Still on ABCs. Go ahead, Tony.
The Clackamas Workforce Partnership currently has 4 openings on their commission. Through a recruitment process, 5 applications were received, and 3 were recommended for appointment. Recommendations include Amy Wynn, Keith Wilson, Manuel Contreras, all to a first term.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Fisher has moved for the 3 appointees to our Clackamas County Workforce Partnership, and Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Any comments? Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. What's up next, Tony?
Madam Chair, the Enhanced Law Enforcement District Budget Committee, staffed by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, currently has 3 openings on their commission. Through a recruitment process, 1 application was received and is recommended for appointment. The recommendation is Gavin Carpenter to a first term.
So move.
Seconded.
Commissioner Schrader has moved Gavin Carpenter appointment to the Enhanced Law Enforcement District Budget Committee. Commissioner Shull has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Shull?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Tony?
Last but not least, the Clackamas County Service District Number 5 Budget Committee under the Department of Transportation and Development currently has 2 openings. Through an application process, 1 application was received. The recommendation is Kevin Bailey, appointment to a first term.
Okay, so move.
Seconded.
Commissioner Schrader has moved Kevin Bailey be appointed to the Clackamas County Service District Number 5 Budget Committee. Commissioner Shull has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Shull?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Board.
Thank you. The final item for issues is Commissioner Communications. However, you also have a policy session. Would you be willing to do the policy session next and then come back to Commissioner Communications?
Yeah, I think that's okay, Board. Is that all right? Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, thank you. Jumping ahead to your single policy session today, it is contingency and reserve policy. The presenter is Sandra Montoya, our budget manager in the Department of Finance. And you have your staff report. So Sandra, please come forward.
Welcome, Sandra. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Sandra Montoya, Budget Manager for Clackamas County. And before you today, I am presenting on the contingency and reserve policy. Finance is requesting a new contingency and reserve policy that will replace the current reserve for future expenditures and contingency accounts policy. The current policy is 10 years old. It was adopted in 2012, so we feel it's a little outdated, and this new policy brings it current and more on par with some of the issues that we're dealing with and the desire for replacement funds and reserves that will better protect the county financially. So this policy guides the development of contingency and reserve minimum, its uses, and replenishment, and it directly affects the county's financial plans, its annual budget process, and its debt financing. The policy reflects financial planning best practices as recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association and provides guidance for making those decisions. If adopted, future budgets and financial plans will be guided by this policy. These documents have been reviewed and approved by the Policy Committee, the county's executive management team, and have been sent to the unions for comment. And with that, I will pause.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, a great job on condensing 16 or so pages of stuff. I'm totally fine with bringing it into GASB compliance, if you will, into those standards, so I don't have any problem with that. I have a couple questions, though. Is there anything in the budget that has changed in the budget we're about to work on next week that is reflected here or would change?
So the current budget, proposed budget, was made public last week. So you all have it, and it is not prepared with this current policy, with this drafted policy. It is based on the adopted policy, which is the 2012 policy. So the answer would be no. The current proposed budget does not have any of these recommended changes in it.
Okay, so my other question related to that is that, can you give me an example of anything significant, any movement of dollars that would change by, in effect, implementing this policy, this suggested change?
So I haven't done that analysis to tell you exact movement, but if I had time to just formulate that, I would say in the general fund, it would be more acceptable to have a higher level of contingency. Right now, in the proposed budget, you have a 7% contingency for fiscal year 22-23. In this new policy, if adopted, you could have as high as a 25% contingency. So while that seems very high, If you think through in Oregon, where we only receive property tax in the general fund is the largest revenue source, and the majority of it comes in November. So what we receive in November really has to carry us through for an entire year. And we start to spend down that money that we receive in November, and I believe statistically we get about 94% of that revenue in the November-December timeframe. Throughout the rest of the year, until the following year, we are spending down those monies. We're distributing it to all of the departments. And so a higher level of contingency really does provide a cushion against, let's say, a COVID 2023. Heaven forbid, but if that were to happen, those sort of things would allow us to have a cushion from that sort of an event.
Yeah, thank you. And lastly, I led the charge on this policy 10 years ago, so I'm glad that we implemented it. It took a while to actually fund that, right? We passed the policy, but we didn't have the monies to actually have those dollar amounts set aside. So how long do you think it would take for us, and maybe that'd be perhaps a budget question for next week as well, to actually fully fund the policy?
I would need to get back to you on that analysis, and we can certainly provide some estimates for you during next week's budget committee meetings. Like you're saying, it would not happen overnight. This policy does allow that at the year end, so once the audit is complete and we know what the difference is, so what was the remaining funds, net revenue, if you would, then we would look at that amount, and any amount not already carried forward in the budget, we would then be able to distribute into buckets like contingency, like reserves. It could be for special projects, something like the courthouse. This policy allows for that sort of distribution into savings buckets that are for things that you have identified as a priority.
Okay, thank you.
So it sounds like this is a cash management policy that we use our contingency to keep from overspending.
Oh, absolutely.
In a nutshell,
Yes.
that's what it is. It's cash management.
Yes, and this also does touch on reserves, because the policy in the past called it a reserve, but it really did have a paragraph for contingency as well. So just in title, it now captures both. And I think the major change in this is that it encapsulates all of the funds, not just general fund, because the current policy, I shouldn't call it old, the current policy only identifies what we need to do for the general fund.
Got it, got it. Any other questions for the presenter on this? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Smith. I'm thinking back during 2008, 2009, 2010, when we had the major recession, and my job at the time was the legislative director of the Department of Human Services, of which we went through tremendous planning because we had to cut the budgets that were then flowed down to the counties across the state. And so I'm just interested, and you don't have to answer this now, this is a topic for another day, but I'm looking into the future, and I so appreciate our contingency and reserves and our great fiscal management, but we all know that if we hit a real downturn, it's not going to be enough to keep government functioning as it goes. But I'm curious, do we do any forecasting as to how those reserves could be used, or how long they would last, or what they would be most effective for in the event that we hit another economic downturn, which I think we all know it will happen, because it is just what happens in economies, and we're anticipating that.
So I understand you're saying, don't fully answer that, because I really don't at this point have the answer, but the policy at 25% is 60 days of operating.
Okay.
So if you just back into that calculation, we would at all points be driving towards 60 days of operating, which I think for a county our size is appropriate. And it's actually a little scary that we're not there now. If you think right now it's at 5%, there's a lot of play there. And again, that doesn't include reserves, which the Oregon budget law says in an emergency situation, you actually can draw on reserves as well. So we should note that.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this? I will entertain a motion.
Move approval of the policy.
Seconded.
Commissioner Schrader has moved for approval of the new contingency and reserve policy. Commissioner Scholl has seconded that. Any further discussion?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
I think I just want to caution everyone, moving from a 5% contingency to a 25%, because how I'm reading it, right, Sandra?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. That's going to take a lot of time. So that is going to, I guess we're going to have to figure out how we're going to prioritize. It'd be nice to know we had that much cushion, right?
No.
But frankly, it could take a decade or two, actually, to generate that much more, that's much more funds when we are extremely tight. So I would want to make sure that we talk about how we prioritize some of our initiatives over this particular policy, which one takes precedent. And I'm just going to say it. I don't think we can't fund this right now. I don't think I'll be a commissioner, regardless how tonight goes or this election goes, I'll be a commissioner to ever see this funded.
Well, I just did the quick math, and it's 36 million. 25% of what our current general fund allocation is would be 36 million just on this alone. So I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Salas. And so sometimes I think this is a good goal for us to set going forward. I think we're trying to protect our vital resources, which includes our workforce. We know we have huge roll-up costs coming with those in the future years. And we're trying to protect, the budget process and not take on anything new that we really can't afford. That's how I look at it. Gary, do you have any comments about this?
It is and the policy says it's a target, not that you are required to, but it's a target, contingency target. When you hear my budget presentation next week, you'll hear my plan in the next 2 fiscal years to get us right-sized. So
Okay.
we'll get there quicker, I believe.
Mr. Salas?
Yeah, so I have one question as we looking forward and with this in mind, and that is that I hope that this is not done in isolation by department. It is done at a grander scale of either the budget committee or the general fund. I wouldn't want to see a particular department say, "Oh, we have a 25. I'm gonna shoehorn all this money into my fund, right? And I'm gonna move at a different rate than maybe another department," because that would be. I think that would be good. I could see some challenge with that because we've been counting on some of those overages of contingencies that carried over, and I thought it was excessive. This is a lot of money, and I wouldn't want to have that done individually. I would really want to look at it across the board for the general fund in general.
Absolutely.
So is that how it's drafted, Sandra?
I'm sorry. So in the general fund, we look at it holistically. So it's not granular at the department, and in fact, we don't hold contingency at the departmental level in the general fund. So in the general fund, it's maintained in what we call non-departmental, which means it doesn't belong to any one department.
Okay, I feel more comfortable with that.
Okay, good. Sue, we have a motion, correct?
Yes.
Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you, Commissioners. Because this is a resolution, we'll bring this as soon as possible to your next available business meeting. Not this Thursday, but in June. Okay, thank you. That's the last policy session today. We're back to issues. The final item is Commissioner Communications.
Okay, Commissioner Scholl, we'll start with you and go down the line.
Okay, good morning. Last Saturday, Commissioner Savas and I had the privilege of speaking at the Philip Foster Farm. For those of you who don't know what that farm is, Philip Foster was an early pioneer to Oregon on the Barlow Trail, started a farm, general store, blacksmith shop, and that farm has been preserved by the Foster family ever since, and through the work of a lot of hardworking volunteers. It's a beautiful place, and history being so important, our kids love to go there, classrooms love to go there and see what it was like to live in 1840s Oregon Territory. So people can go online to the Philip Foster Farm, learn about it, and see what you can do to help them out to sustain that beautiful place. Also on Saturday, or Sunday, I had the privilege to go to the Kiwanis Spaghetti Dinner in Gladstone. You know, the Kiwanis do so much for our county and especially for our kids. And so anybody who can, go on their website and see what you can do to help them out. They're currently doing their fundraising at this time. Everyone knows about the election process and the problems we have with the latest printing glitch. Chair Smith talked about it earlier in this meeting, but I want to thank everybody for volunteering to go there to help out with that. Anybody out there who has got some time in the next couple of weeks, please contact the elections office and see how you can help. Also this evening on wildfires, the wildfire community preparation event in Estacado at 6 o'clock. I'll be there. I'm looking forward to meeting those folks and talking about how we can get our communities prepared to withstand any potential fires this year. And finally, I'd like to remind folks out there that hear this about this meeting today. The county has sent out from our housing authority a request for information on projects that can help alleviate homeless insecurity in Clackamas County. I ask churches, businesses, communities to look at that and see how you can help us out. That's our Safety Off the Street program. Once we get these transitional projects built, we'll have options to get homeless folks who are experiencing insecurities of living in the streets or in the parks into a more secure place. And then secondly, we talked earlier today about the need for mental health and addiction counseling and an intake center. Once we get those things done in Clackamas County, we'll be able to enforce vagrancy laws and really make a difference in the homeless situation in Clackamas County, both for property owners and for people who are experiencing the tragedy of homelessness. So people out there can really help us by looking at that RFI from the Housing Authority and seeing what you can do to help this county out, get those projects built. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Smith. I just want to say thank you to our county administrator, thank you to our chair, and to this commission for being very engaged on helping the county clerk try to resolve the issue of the ballots, of duplicating all of those ballots. I want to especially emphasize, I appreciate Chair Smith calling Sherry Hall in the statement that we started the meeting off with, of Sherry Hall calling for volunteers and needing Republicans and non-affiliated voters. I would really like assurances from our county clerk that she will be continuing to count over the weekends. I reached out to her on after we had her in our boardroom on Thursday and wanted assurances that they were going to duplicate all the ballots that they could in preparation for tonight's count. And I did not get that assurance, and it's my understanding that there were not individuals counting over this last weekend. So I would really like us to do all that we can to persuade and encourage her to secure we have county staff that our administrator is saying, please, we will have this be done. It's my understanding from talking to people who have been duplicating these ballots that it's difficult and it's tedious, and you're duplicating a whole ballot so that it can run through the process that has been state prescribed. So with that, I think that from our perspective, we are working real hard on this and want to encourage our clerk to join us in this effort to do everything we can to get people on board, on deck, to duplicate those ballots. And a thank you to all of the volunteers who thus far have spent the time in doing this. It's challenging work, as I understand it.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Schrader.
Well, yesterday I had the opportunity to visit Sunnyside Medical Center, which is a Kaiser Permanente institution. And I had an opportunity to work with their government, to meet with their government relations person, their executive director, and their director of operations, where I received a full tour of the hospital and the services that they offer. I will also plan to do this with Hopeful Legacy Systems as well as Providence. As you know, medical centers are actually economic drivers, believe it or not, in our area. And knowing what they do with public health and for our communities, to me, is an essential piece of knowledge that I'd like to have. I want to thank Philip Mason Joyner for joining me as our public health director and building those relationships. And during my tour, they graciously offered me lunch too, which was very nice. I want to thank folks for their generosity and for their hospitality. I had an opportunity to visit their NICU. And of course, that is where premature babies are taken care of, and speak directly to the nursing staff on what their processes are, how they care for these children. I also had an opportunity to visit their Northwest Center for Heart and Vascular Care. They are actually in the top 10% here in Clackamas County with their heart and vascular care operations here, and again, got to speak to the floor directors, the RNs who work there, as well as the rest of the staff, and got to tour that entire facility. I also visited general surgery and had an opportunity to get the whole rundown on how they're getting caught up right now with COVID-19, and how some of the surgeries that have had to be put on hold, they're now moving forward with. So that was good to hear. I would really like to mention their behavioral health unit, because it really verified what we've already heard from some of my colleagues here, Commissioner Shull, Commissioner, all of us actually, is that they are overwhelmed. They have a behavioral health unit. Oftentimes, if they get people stabilized, again, the lack of any place to move people even out of that unit, and the fact that they may be stuck in a hospital situation where they need something more brighter and lighter and really move on to more extensive treatment is an essential need. And they really did verify that for me as we walked through that particular unit. The other thing I'd like to mention is that there's a significant shortage of nurses, and that is something that is going to have to be rectified. They've even talked about maybe getting some of the things nurses do, maybe even having robotics enter into it as we move forward in the 21st century model of medicine. I do know that coming from a family of nurses, sometimes we don't realize what an extremely difficultly physical job it is in moving patients, turning patients, and indeed it takes its wear and tear on people. So I want to thank everyone that is involved, Clackamas Community College, Linfield, University of Portland, any institution that has nursing programs now, to really, really help that pipeline move along so our hospital systems, Kaiser, Providence, Legacy, actually have an opportunity to keep staffed up and to keep keep that growing here, that important public health. We did talk about public health. They gave us an update on how they handled COVID, what their procedures were, and they really look forward to continuing their work with our public health department. I think we built some good relationships yesterday. So that was my news. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, a couple things. I just kind of build on the discussion about the elections. We certainly hope that we get adequate staffing. I think that's the challenge. I think we heard the most recently with trying to get the right mix of people, party-oriented, to do this. So I just wonder, and Gary, just going to throw this out as an idea, if there's, maybe we can tap, if we need resources or people, we look at some of our ABCs that might be willing to tap that and say, hey, could you help? You know, and by the way, party affiliation does matter in this case to abide by state law. But I think we need to have all hands on deck. If there's an opportunity to work on, I won't say 24/7, but I think Commissioner Fisher's point about working over the weekend or whatever it may be, that's not uncommon after Election Day, but I'm surprised to hear. But there again, I also heard it was a staffing that we need to make sure we have a partisan balance. So if we don't have the volunteers, there's no sense of being open. But what I did want to talk about on this thread of the homeless issue, and I've been researching this for a long time, and my heart burned a little bit with the Supportive Housing Service implementation plan is that it is dependent upon these mobile units, and I'm really, I won't say I'm not questioning that. I think there's a vital need for that. So I support that. But in and of itself, it's not the only, it's just part of the solution. And just as we look at recidivism, when we track people that commit crimes, let's say, I'm not associating the two, but just use that as an example, we track that to see, are they going through the cycle after 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, what is the most successful path to get people away from their behavioral health challenges, whether it's substance abuse or whatnot. And I think we need to look at all those options. I'm, from an experience with someone I know, I do know that there are some people that need, 10 days or 30 days or more of, I won't say isolation, but that 24/7 care, to be monitored, to have those support systems in place at a facility that gets them the recovery they need. If these people are continuing to be having substance abuse challenges, we're perpetuating their problem by not addressing it long term. So, we need to do everything, and I'm going to keep on talking about this because there are too many of our professionals out there that are dealing with this or saying the same thing. They want the help. They really want to see the solutions. They want a facility that they can take people. And I think there's people that are stuck. They are chemically dependent, and they don't want to be. But, having someone visit them when they have a crisis is not enough to get them out of that cycle. So we need to look at the cycle in its entirety. And as I mentioned, as we talked about, recently about, how some of that impairs business operations of some of our, whether they're food establishments or other businesses, when people walk into their place of business and they either having an episode, they intimidate people, they destroy property. I'm just wondering, as a town hall topic, if we can't get, and people have asked for this, the election season is a great time. People find you, and I'm one of those people being found right now because I'm on the ballot. And this issue about, there's not enough resources out over there. There's not enough places around. And they want to talk to the sheriff or they want to talk to these emergency responders. I just wondered if a town hall with ourselves, maybe some of our paramedics or firefighters that respond to these things, and our law enforcement officials to talk about this system as it works and see if we can't get some energy behind that and answer a lot of questions. They think that we're tied together. Some of them think that we run the fire districts. We don't run the fire districts. So I think we can actually add some value to our public outreach by doing so. Just want to throw that out there as an idea. And with that concludes my comments for today.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Next week is Budget Week, so we will not be meeting in this capacity as issues and updates. So all the policy decisions will be put off for the next week after that. But I look forward to the folks listening to the budget or participating in our public forum that we have here today. Please support our republic and our Constitution by voting. Don't let this hiccup in the road deter your ability for your freedom of speech and your electoral right by voting, because your vote does matter. And please remember, this Board of County Commissioners has really no oversight over our independently elected clerk. She is running the program. The Oregon Secretary of State has more authority over her than we ever thought of. The only thing that we can do is make statements in support. Our administrator has offered county staff as much as she needs to do this. Please, people, show up and help our clerk be successful in all of our efforts for voting in this county. That's all I have to say. Seeing no further business before this commission, we are adjourned.